The company's annual New Year's party was supposed to be simple. Good food, free drinks, polite laughs, and a few hours of pretending we were all one big happy corporate family. I'd been to enough of them to know the script. Our boss, Richard, would give a long speech about record growth. The accountants would pretend to understand the numbers, and everyone would cheer just loud enough to be heard, but not so loud as to sound desperate. This year, I brought my wife, Emily. She was stunning that night in a midnight blue dress that made half the room stop talking for a second when we walked in. I felt proud, not possessive, just proud that she was with me. She'd always been supportive, patient through the long hours and the missed dinners. When my department struggled to meet goals last quarter, she was the one who said, "Don't quit, just outlast the storm." We found a table near the back, close enough to hear the music, but far enough to avoid the spotlight. The evening started normally, small talk, champagne, that polite laughter people use when they're trying not to sound bored. Richard worked the room like a politician, his arms slung around shoulders, his fake charisma shining under the chandelier. Everyone wanted to be in his orbit. When he reached our table, I stood to shake his hand. "Great party, sir," I said. "Call me Richard," he said, already scanning the room as if looking for someone more important. Then his gaze landed on Emily and his grin widened. "You must be the famous wife. My. You really did well for yourself, didn't you, Jason?" Emily gave a polite smile. "Thank you. It's nice to finally meet you." Richard leaned forward slightly, his voice lowering just enough to sound playful and wrong at the same time. "You sure you don't want to transfer departments, Jason? I might need a good reason to give you a raise." The table laughed awkwardly, unsure if it was supposed to be a joke. Emily looked down, uncomfortable. I forced a tight smile, the kind you wear when you know arguing would only feed the fire. "I prefer to earn my bonuses the old-fashioned way," I said. "Fair enough," he said, clinking his glass against mine. "But just so you know, in my world, loyalty should always come with a reward." He walked away, leaving a faint trail of expensive cologne and arrogance. Emily exhaled. "What a creep," she whispered. "Yeah," I said. "That's management for you." As the night went on, the alcohol kept flowing, and Richard's voice grew louder from the center of the room. He was surrounded by a circle of people who laughed too hard at every word. At one point, he jumped onto the small stage near the DJ booth, microphone in hand, and tapped it twice. "All right, folks, let's have some fun before midnight, shall we?" Everyone turned toward him. I felt a knot form in my stomach. He was the kind of man who loved humiliating others for sport. Richard raised his glass. "Let's make this interesting," he slurred. "Whichever man here sends his wife with me tonight gets double his annual bonus." The room erupted in nervous laughter, half disbelief, half fear. He held his arms out. "Come on, don't act shy now. It's a joke, or maybe not, depending on who's brave enough." My fists clenched. I could feel heat crawling up my neck. I pushed my chair back, ready to leave. I wasn't going to sit through that filth. But before I could move, Emily's voice cut through the air like a blade. "I agree," she shouted. The room went dead silent. Every head turned toward our table. Richard froze, his smirk faltering as if he couldn't tell whether she was joking. I stared at her. "Emily, what the hell are you doing?" I whispered, my voice barely holding steady. She smiled sweetly at me, her tone calm, but loud enough for everyone to hear. "You've worked so hard this year, honey. Don't you want that bonus?" A few people laughed uncomfortably. Someone near the bar muttered, "She's kidding, right?" Richard blinked, then grinned, like a wolf. Well, didn't expect anyone to take me seriously. You're quite the sport, Mrs. Carter." Emily lifted her glass in a mock toast. "Just following company policy, Richard. You said loyalty should come with rewards." The laughter around the room grew louder, sharper, people trying to diffuse the tension with noise. My chest tightened. My wife was defending herself with sarcasm, but the crowd didn't know that. To them, it sounded like agreement. I stood up slowly, pushing my chair back until it screeched against the floor. "Enough," I said. The word wasn't loud, but it cut through the laughter like glass. Richard chuckled. "Relax, Jason. It's a party. You don't have to be such a saint." I looked at him, then at Emily, Her eyes met mine, a flicker of something behind them. Pain, apology, maybe both. I smiled. Calm. Too calm. You're right, Richard. It's a party. I walked to the center of the room, past the tables of people who were now whispering behind their hands. I took the microphone from his hand before he could react. You know what? I said, forcing a smile. Let's make this memorable. Richard laughed nervously. Now you're talking. I raised my glass. To our boss, Richard, a man who believes loyalty can be bought, decency can be mocked, and respect has a price tag. Let's all drink to that. A few people chuckled, most didn't. I took a sip, then continued. But here's the thing, Richard. Loyalty isn't a transaction, and respect? You earn it by not acting like a pig in a tuxedo. The room went silent again. His face turned red, veins bulging in his neck. You watch your mouth, Carter, he growled. Why? I asked. Because you'll fire me? Do it. You'll be saving me the trouble of quitting on Monday. Someone gasped. I placed the microphone back on the stand, looked him straight in the eye and said, But before you do, maybe check your work email. You'll find something interesting waiting there. He frowned. What are you talking about? I smiled, finished my drink, and said quietly, Happy New Year, boss. Then I took Emily's hand and walked out, leaving the whispers and camera flashes behind. She didn't say a word until we reached the parking lot. The night air bit through her perfume, cold and clean. Jason, she whispered, what did you do? I opened the car door for her, still calm, still smiling. Let's just say the fireworks are starting early this year. Because what she and everyone else didn't know yet was that I'd been waiting months for this moment, and by tomorrow morning the entire company would see exactly who Richard really was. Emily sat in silence the whole drive home. Her fingers twisted the strap of her purse, knuckles white against the leather. Streetlights flickered across her face, washing her in a pale rhythm of guilt and confusion. She kept glancing at me, waiting for me to speak, to explode. But I didn't. I just drove, calm, deliberate, the same way I'd handled everything in my life. When we finally reached home, she turned to me, her voice small. Jason, you embarrassed him. You embarrassed yourself. I looked at her and almost laughed. Embarrassed him? He humiliated you in front of everyone and you're worried about his pride? She crossed her arms. It was a joke. Everyone knew that. No, I said, stepping closer. Everyone knew it wasn't. You just didn't want to admit it. Her eyes hardened. You didn't have to make a scene. That was the moment I realized something deeper than betrayal had happened. She wasn't just defending him. She was defending what he represented. Money, status, power. The kind of validation she thought I couldn't give her anymore. Go to bed, I said finally, voice low. We'll talk in the morning. But I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my office, staring at the soft glow of the computer screen, my mind replaying every detail of the evening. Richard's smirk, her voice shouting, I agree. The laughter, the silence. And then I opened the folder on my desktop labeled Insurance. I'd started building it 3 months ago, after hearing rumors about Richard. The after-hours meetings, the hush money disguised as consulting bonuses, and the constant pattern of women leaving the company suddenly, without explanation. I'd never planned to use it, until tonight. Emails, screenshots, text logs, audio recordings from the conference room where he'd slipped up, saying a little too much after a few too many drinks. My department handled project reports that passed through his approval chain, which meant I had access to the paper trail. He'd been laundering company money through fake vendor accounts, inflating budgets and paying off 2 people to keep quiet. And now, after his little joke, the timing was perfect. At 2 a.m., I compiled everything into a digital folder and drafted 3 emails. 1 to the board, 1 to HR, and 1 to a major client who'd recently threatened to pull funding over ethical concerns. I scheduled them all to send at 7 a.m. sharp. Then I packed a small box from my desk, framed photos, the mug Emily bought me when I got promoted, a notebook full of ideas for projects that would never see daylight now. I placed my ID badge on top of it, neatly. When I crawled into bed beside her, she stirred. "Are you okay?" she mumbled, half asleep. "I'm perfect," I said quietly. "Tomorrow's going to be a big day." The next morning, Emily woke expecting her usual cup of coffee on the nightstand, a tradition I'd never missed in 5 years of marriage. Instead, she found a printed note folded neatly next to the mug. "No coffee today. Thought you might want something stronger. Check your email." I stood by the kitchen window, phone in hand, watching the sunrise crawl up over the rooftops. 7 a.m. came, 3 emails sent. At 7:05, my phone started vibrating, one message after another. Colleagues, supervisors, HR. It was chaos. Emily came running into the kitchen, phone in hand. "Jason, what did you do?" I smiled faintly. "Told the truth." Her voice trembled. "You sent company files? That's career suicide." I turned to her, calm as ever. "No, that's justice. What he said last night was the final straw. I've watched that man destroy good people for years, and I'm not letting him do it anymore." She dropped into a chair, stunned. "You'll ruin us." I shook my head. "He already did. I'm just cleaning up the mess." At 8:10, I got a call from the head of HR, voice tight and formal. "Jason, we received your email. The board wants to meet immediately. And the evidence you sent, it's serious." "I know," I said. "I'll be in by 9. When I arrived at the office, the building buzzed with tension. Whispers followed me through the hallways. People had seen the emails. Richard's office door was closed, blinds drawn. As I passed the break room, someone murmured, "He's finished." Another added, "About time." The board meeting was short and surgical. I laid out everything. The fraudulent vendors, the falsified reports, the hush payments, even audio clips of Richard's threats. The board members' faces shifted from disbelief to fury. By 10, security was escorting Richard out of the building, red-faced, yelling, sputtering words about betrayal and slander. Cameras flashed as someone recorded him on their phone. He turned to me as he passed. "You think you've won, Carter. You're a dead man in this industry." I met his glare evenly. "Then I'll build my own industry." The elevator doors shut, cutting off whatever else he was going to say. When I left the conference room, my co-workers were waiting, wide-eyed, cautious, curious. Some nodded quietly, others whispered. But one thing was clear. No one was laughing anymore. Emily called me 3 times that morning. I ignored them all. That evening, I went home to find her sitting at the kitchen table, makeup smudged, her phone screen glowing with social media updates. The company's scandal was trending locally. My name wasn't in it, I'd been careful, but the story was everywhere. She looked up at me, tears brimming. "Do you realize what you've done?" "Yeah," I said, hanging up my coat. "I ended a corrupt man's career." "And ours," she cried. "Do you think people won't connect it back to you? They'll think what they want," I interrupted. "But at least they'll know I didn't sell my dignity for a bonus." She stood up, shaking. "You humiliated me. You made a scene in front of everyone, and now my friends are calling, asking if it's true. They think you're some kind of vigilante." I leaned against the counter, studying her. "Would that really be so bad?" "You don't understand," she said. "We needed him. You needed him. That job was killing me," I cut in. "And the man running it was killing everything decent left in that place." For a long moment, we just stared at each other. 2 strangers sharing the same kitchen, separated by a gulf of choices that couldn't be crossed anymore. Finally, she whispered, "I can't believe you threw it all away." I smiled sadly. "No, Emily, I threw him away. You just haven't realized he was the problem." I walked past her to the living room, sat down, and turned on the TV. The local news anchor's voice filled the room. "Breaking tonight. CEO Richard Lyons has resigned amid allegations of misconduct and fraud. Sources within the company claim the evidence came from an internal whistleblower." Her face went pale. "Oh my God." I sipped my water. "Told you it'd be a big day." By the end of the week, I was officially unemployed, by choice. The board thanked me privately, offered severance, and told me the company would restructure. Within days, they deleted Richard's name from the website and issued a statement about a renewed commitment to ethics. I didn't need their thanks. The satisfaction came quietly, the morning I woke up and didn't dread looking in the mirror. Emily, though, she couldn't handle the fallout. Her social circle, the one she'd built around company wives and cocktail parties, started to crumble. No one wanted to be seen with the woman married to the man who'd burned down the Golden Tower. One night she sat across from me at dinner, eyes red. "I can't stay here, Jason. Everyone looks at me like I'm the enemy." "You're not the enemy," I said softly. "But maybe now you'll understand what it's like to stand next to someone they all underestimate." She didn't answer. She just looked at her plate and whispered, "I didn't mean to hurt you." I nodded. "I know, but you still did." When she left 2 weeks later to clear her head, I didn't stop her. I didn't pack her things or argue. I just held the door, said goodbye, and closed it quietly. Months passed. The company stabilized under new leadership. I started consulting work for smaller businesses, helping them rebuild trust where it had been broken. Turns out honesty still pays, just not as fast as corruption. Then one morning, a letter arrived. No return address. Inside was a small card, written in her handwriting. "I watched your interview on the local news. You looked proud. I wish I'd seen that side of you before it was too late. I'm sorry. Truly." I folded the card and placed it in a drawer. That night I sat by the window, the same one I'd stared through the morning after the party, and realized something simple but profound. Revenge isn't about destruction. It's about reclaiming your story from the people who tried to rewrite it. Richard lost his power. Emily lost her illusion. And me? I finally found peace. When the next New Year's Eve came around, I stood on my balcony with a glass of champagne, alone but content, watching fireworks bloom across the city skyline. My phone buzzed with messages, friends, co-workers, new clients. But the one that mattered most was a simple text from an unknown number. "To the man who taught me integrity has no price, Happy New Year." I didn't know who sent it, maybe someone from the old office, maybe a stranger who read the story. But it didn't matter. I smiled, raised my glass to the stars, and whispered, "Happy New Year," because for the first time in a long time I meant it. A year later, the echoes of that night had faded into quiet memory. The scandal became just another story people told at business lunches. A warning, a rumor, a legend. But for me, it was the start of something new. I rented a small workspace downtown, nothing fancy. Just a desk, a window, and a dream that didn't depend on anyone else's approval. I called my new company, Clear Path Consulting. The name came to me one morning while shaving. I didn't want to build another empire. I wanted to build a direction. At first, clients came slow. Small shops, family businesses that needed help cleaning their books, restoring order. I worked long hours, but the difference was night and day. I was working for myself now. Every decision, every client, every dollar earned was honest. There's a kind of peace that only comes when you stop living under someone else's ceiling. One afternoon, I was grabbing coffee at a local cafe when a woman in her late 30s stopped me. She had kind eyes and a professional air. "You're Jason Carter, right?" I nodded cautiously. "Depends who's asking." She smiled. "Relax. I'm in HR at Beaumont Industries. We've been trying to find someone with your ethics background. We read about your whistleblower case." "Case?" I laughed. "That's a generous word for what happened." She shrugged. "Maybe, but people like you make the rest of us braver." Her name was Rachel, and she hired me as a consultant 2 weeks later. What started as a few compliance projects turned into a friendship built on shared values. Late-night talks about business, trust, and second chances. She never asked about Emily, and I never volunteered much. But one evening, while we were packing up from a long day, she said, "You know, the way you talk about integrity, it's not about revenge, is it?" I thought about that for a moment. "No," I said quietly. "Revenge burns quick. Integrity lasts longer. I just chose the second fire." She smiled. "That's a good answer." Over time, the friendship deepened. There was no rush, no pretending, just steady, genuine connection. We took walks by the river, cooked dinner together, laughed about terrible office coffee. For the first time since the chaos, life didn't feel like rebuilding. It felt like living. Emily reached out once more. An email, short and simple. "I'm remarried. I hope you're happy too." I typed a reply but never sent it. Some stories don't need an epilogue. By the second anniversary of that infamous party, ClearPath had 10 employees. The company was thriving, known for transparency and accountability. I stood in our new office that day, looking out the window at the city below. It wasn't power I felt, it was peace. Later that evening, Rachel dropped by with 2 cups of coffee. "You know," she said, "you never told me what actually happened that night." I chuckled. "It's a long story." "I've got time," she said, smiling. So I told her. The arrogance, the insult, the silence that followed. She didn't interrupt, didn't look shocked. When I finished, she said softly, "You did what most people dream of. You stood up for yourself and didn't lose your soul in the process." I looked out at the lights flickering across the city skyline. "Maybe," I said, "but I learned something even more important, that revenge isn't about hurting someone else. It's about ending the hold they have on you." She reached for my hand. "And you did." The fireworks started early that night, some corporate event across the bay. The sky bloomed in color, red and gold and white. I raised my cup toward the window, the reflection catching my tired but steady smile. "Happy New Year," I said. Rachel clinked her cup against mine. "To new beginnings." And for once the words weren't just tradition, they were truth. Because in the end, the best revenge isn't destruction. It's peace, purpose, and the quiet confidence of knowing you walked through fire and came out clean.